as the shadows deepen and life is ebbing low. Hold on before I go. Come, the wheel turns, not for the greater gifts of genius, not for thoughts more grandly bright. All the dying poets whisper into light. We travel round the sun, only the gods know where we run. We travel round the sun, only the gods know where we run. We travel round the sun, only the gods know where we run.
I'm glad you took the time to do this. It really means a lot to me. I appreciate you doing that.
Well, it's also nice to be invited, you know, it's a both way kind of thing. So
Who would not invite you to talk? You're like one of my favorite. You were like one of my favorite interviews last year when we talked, and I was like, you
like,
set the bar really high, and I was like, hmm. I was like,
yeah,
I probably had more fun on our interview because we talked for the first time, and I was like,
yeah,
oh, there's nothing better than when you get to talk to an artist and learn about their music for the first time,
yeah.
and then once you get to know that artist, you kind of, I kind of go, did that go good enough that I want to talk to them again? Do they want to talk to me again? And I
For
love
sure.
that.
For sure. You have a very charismatic and warm energy about you in your interview. So it was a no-brainer for me to say, sure, let's chat again. So yeah,
Like I woke up and I had a good energy to me, and I was like, oh, I
good,
already feel calm because I know I'm going to be
good.
talking to somebody that gets that.
Someone once said my voice could calm Genghis Khan. I was like, that's kind of a big compliment. I don't know if I actually would calm this historical figure down, but maybe it's a new calling, you know?
Well, I really do appreciate you taking the time to talk again, and I think I got your name right, Kat Ran.
Kati Ran, yeah,
Kati
exactly.
Ran, so
Yeah,
close. I know.
so close.
I actually
That's the artist name. But yes, that is how you say it. Mm.
I actually corrected my friend the other day because he said Katie Ran, and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh no, it's Kati Ran,
that's
and he was like, oh well,
has
look
a
at you.
has a very different meaning also. Like if you're running away or yeah.
Oh,
But
so what is the because obviously every name has some sort of a lineage or like a
yes.
history to it. Like, what is the meaning behind your name?
So for me, it's funny because I got really interested in Nordic mythology around 10, 15 years ago and Scandinavian fairy tales, etc. And I found out, that there's all these Northern mythology gods. Like everyone knows Odin or Freya or Frey or Thor. But then there's also some lesser known gods and goddesses from this Nordic cosmos in a way. And one of them is named Ran, which also quite directly means the robber.
Oh,
But she's this ocean goddess. And then I figured out that from my mother's side, we have ancestry with the last name of Ran directly. So we don't know exactly. Most likely they were fishermen. It could have been because sometimes we don't know why we get the last names we have in our ancestry. Maybe it has something to do with a job function. I hope it wasn't because we were famous for robbery, but it's something to do there that I thought, oh, that's like kind of really slightly naively. I was like, that's great. Then I'm gonna use this name as my artist name because I did wanted to have a little bit of distance between my artistry and, my everyday going about things. And then I thought, okay, artist name is good to use for this Nordic music that I do, and let's stick with that because it's not far off from my family. So that's how it came to be that it became Kati Ran. And it was then after that I already took the artist name that I started to really learn, what this actually was about and what type of personality this goddess has in the Nordic myths. And so I don't know if it's actually very reflective of my own character, but I still think it has a nice ring to it. Yeah.
It's so interesting that you said that because I feel like, like with American names, I think so like my last name is from French. It's De
Yeah.
Lamont. And so it's a French lineage that I have, but I was born in New Orleans, and so a lot of my ancestors were French Creole, lived in Louisiana, and I
Yeah.
kind of did the same thing you did. I was like, I want to research what my name is. Like, what does this do? And it turns
Mm.
out that the DE means of, so it's a prefix. And
Yeah.
so you have the DE that is the of, and then the last name is usually like the location or the job that these people had. And so
Yes. Yes.
Lamont translated as mountain of water. And so
Beautiful.
my name was Donald of the Water Mountain. I have no idea what the hell they
Wow.
did. I was like, maybe I should make that my stage name, but I was like, it's way too long. It doesn't sound.
I like it. I don't care if it's long personally. Like I think it's a beautiful name actually. We can be proud of those longer titles from the past. So if you are going to go on stage, I would definitely do that. I would go with the mountain water, the heritage. Yeah. Water
It's
mountain.
Yeah, whichever one sounds better is probably which one I would use instead of being so,
Yeah,
but that's
but it's
interesting.
beautiful.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because, it's like when I was thinking about like when I was trying to think of things to talk to you about, that was one of the things I wanted to ask was
Mm,
the Nordic people are so proud of their heritage and their history and the lineage from which they come from.
mm,
And that seems to be something that is lost a lot of times in, American heritage. Like we come from a country where right now we have a president who wants to completely erase parts of history. That's
mhm.
terrible. But like when I listen to your music and I listen to the music of other Celtic, Nordic artists or whatever, there is this pride of your
Yeah.
history. So do you kind of feel a little bit of pressure sometimes to be like, I'm carrying this on for upcoming generations so that they remember the history and the folklore?
Yeah, I don't feel that pressure of sorts for how will future generations interpret what we do today with our art. If anything, I would hope that it shows that there are still people living in today's generations that really care about nature and history and to, take care of each other, and that there was, that there are people who are willing the good to live in harmony with each other and in nature and uh, in harmony with nature and in peace on the earth. So I'm afraid future generations will look at this period as a period of turmoil. So if anything, I just hope that my works, but also those of the shared community here that work with similar topics and messaging behind their works of music or art or anything they do, paintings. Yeah, just signal, that we do want the best for the earth and for humanity. But I don't feel the lineage pressure per se. I'm of course a Dutch person. I haven't been growing up in Scandinavia, so I cannot from firsthand experience say what that's like. I've heard stories, from people who are Norwegian or Swedish or Danish, and they work in a similar field, and I think it's beautiful that they bring artworks that shed broader and more deeper light on these topics of history, and that it's not becoming a cartoonesque um, figure, these old gods or pagan core values from the past as they are taught in their schools. So I think it's good that they deepen it out and that it doesn't become a Marvel character only. Yeah, in today's world.
That's
Yeah.
so funny because I was actually going to bring that up, was that I feel like, especially with the mythology and the folklore and things like that, is that it's a very American thing to go, okay, we're going to take this and we're going to blow it up and we're going to make it action figures and comic heroes,
Yeah.
and the true meaning of it is gone. And I feel like sometimes that's very unfortunate for American audiences, because when they think of
Mm.
Thor, they think of a big white guy with a hammer and muscles and a
Yeah.
hat with little wings on it. But do they really know what Thor was about? Or do they just think Thor is this guy in a comic book? And I think that's really
Yeah.
unfortunate because,
Yeah.
generations coming up are so closed off from the rest of the world and what their
Mm.
history and their folklore is. And
Mm.
so, do you find that insulting sometimes? Like when you look at that and go, you've taken that and made it very cartoony.
No, not at all. I would be lying if it I can enjoy these kind of films as well. Someone showed me that one movie with the Thor character, and it's just comedy and fun and lightheartedness. And I think there's definitely a place for that too. We shouldn't take ourselves so seriously as human beings on this earth by getting offended. I guess if you are a very devout person for this Thor figure and look at the history snippets we have there and more of this God's qualities in farming and such protection of livestock. There's definitely a lot more depth to it than a muscled guy, hammering away. But to take offense on it is, personally, I think it's taking it a little bit too far. Anything of that nature that becomes sort of, you cannot touch this subject because it's offending me, already gives me a little bit of a warning gut feeling like, oh, maybe you're turning this beautiful mythology into a new kind of Christianized version of religion, where we see now sort of new, yeah, it's difficult to touch on this subject actually, but we see sort of new Odin worshippers who are really fanatic. Like you could almost, it's almost like a new form of Christianity, just with a different label. It's very strange to see. But I don't take offense on it. For me, they have been inspirational stories. And that I love to just dwell in these kind of, yeah, sub-realities and make music with those themes. But I also wanna be um, tapping into my own emotions or experiences in life, or the things I find beauty in nature, or in the depth of our emotions and the way our psychology sometimes has to disentangle ourselves from our own maze of the mind, and to see these old stories being entwined with that, because old stories do have core messages from past generations that were important value keepers. The old stories of old indigenous tribes usually had a core value in them on how to behave in society, how to treat each other. And so these beautiful messages behind old stories, that is the thing I'm paying attention to, not so much the figures or the masks or the faces that it gets. The gods from one continent or another continent, they sort of swap faces and names, but very often the core value system still comes through, treat each other with respect. Be careful of tricksters. Just, yeah, treat nature with respect. We are part of it, not on top of it. All of these things that come back in our old stories. And so I think that is what appeals to me the most. And okay, in my case, it was the Scandinavian stories that really appealed to me when I started out making this music. Also with my instrumentation, I started on Swedish nickelarpa, so I looked into Swedish fairy tales. So I just wanted to connect that. Yeah.
And that's so beautiful because, like I said, just to kind of reiterate what I said earlier, is that
Mm,
I do sometimes wish when I'm listening to, Western music, American music, that there was something more there
mm,
about our history and our lineage. And
mm,
I feel like that sometimes that gets kind of lost because of commercial success that artists are reaching out for. And
mm,
I feel like sometimes that gets lost because I'm like, I would love to hear somebody sing about their heritage or their
mm,
families. And I know, like with hip hop music, it's kind of the same thing. Like a lot of them are rapping and writing about where they come from, who they are, what their history was, whether it be
mm.
positive or negative. And I wish there was some sort of preservation in
Yeah.
our music.
It almost has sometimes the function of preservation. Maybe in the old days we carved out an important event on a runestone. Now we maybe write a song about something that has, been of significance. I don't know if in other music genres that works a little bit the same, but as you touch on with the hip hop scene for sure, it's also almost like yeah, recording history as it happens. So I don't know, it could be nice to do. And of course we can always look into the native traditions of any continent if you want to go to make that connection to the land and to your direct surroundings. So in the case of the Americas, there's a lot of native people still you can look into and their stories and be inspired potentially.
As
Yeah.
a songwriter myself,
Mm,
I'm completing work on an album that I've been working on for like 4 years or so.
mm,
But what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of go back through my Louisiana heritage, growing up in New Orleans, being born and raised there, and to try to tie some of my own experiences with the stories and the heritage and even some of the folklore. And
yeah,
that's what took
nice
me
idea.
so long because I really had to work. I had to think. I had to
Mm,
read. I worked with a good friend of mine who she's
yeah,
a songwriter and mentor to me. She helped me kind of formulate the lyrics in a way that would help me project the stories. And it was
yeah,
such an exciting thing to me, but it was exhausting. And so,
yeah,
like, when you were writing these songs,
mm,
is it a long process for you for the same reason, or do you have
yeah.
enough instilled knowledge of these things that it comes pretty quickly for you?
No, I don't what is that saying again? Skip corners. So
Oh,
yes,
cutting
it's
corners. Yeah.
cutting, I'm not cutting corners. Yeah. No, we have to know what we're singing about and potentially have lived it or understood. So for me, I think in another interview as well, I said something about every song had its own kind of quest of sorts of understanding a theme or an emotion or and then finding your way through that with reading. And I think art should come at a cost. I think you should have uh, sort of that natural obstacle of conquering something you want to make, to learn something, to read something, to learn how to make your poetry or lyrics and then perform those and record it. And then, like it's a little bit like Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. We go out on a mission. You have a beautiful idea. You want to find out, you feel that pull. I have something to say about this. Inside in our soul, we have that feeling like I can add something to this. There's something in me that wants to be expressed. And so you're going out and then you meet helpers like your lyric helper, who maybe make sense of how to project that into your lyrics, your research. And you make this whole journey to come to a beautiful conclusion for yourself, and then hopefully your audience also resonates with that, or appreciates that. Any art that comes with a prompt and a press on a button, that doesn't give us the same satisfaction. Not for the artist, but I really believe also not for the listener. I think art is supposed to be hard. That's part of the price we have to pay for it. The yeah, the blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah,
But there's something so gratifying though that when it's completed and
yeah,
someone is listening to it and they connect with it and they find something of themselves in it, that you can look at this and say, "Oh, that was worth all of this hard work that I did."
yeah. I think so. It's important to ground yourself again, indeed, and appreciate those reflections that you're getting back. I had some kind of like personal messages from people who had listened to some of the songs, and that they started to mean a lot to them, like on a very personal level. And I think that's a very cliche thing to say, but it is really the biggest compliment you can get, is to know that your song has traveled to somewhere on the earth that found meaning in it or resonated with it. I think that's for sure the biggest reward to do these things. For me, I really need to have that pull inside me. Do I have something to say? Do I want to add something to this topic? Do I feel that call in myself? And so that's also why with a new record, for example, it really takes me a while to see where I feel like my new calling coming from, to because I don't want to just, and I think that's different per musician, but I don't want to just make music to do some melodic tunes. I really want to have that deeper calling for like a drive to hyper focus on a certain theme or topic, and make it make sense to me to do so much of my time with that. And then I think that the depth that I'm pursuing here, that also adds in the end to the songs, and what people will take out of them.
I can't think of a bigger compliment, like you said, when, a good example is, I've been a singer-songwriter for, God, 30 something years and never have been famous, never had big, like I have very few followers on Spotify. And
Yeah.
sometimes I go, oh, I wish more people, but one day I was looking at my statistics on who was streaming my music, and there was one stream that came from Poland. And I was like,
Nice.
Poland. And ironically, I had an email the next day from this guy who does an internet radio show from his home, who is in
Mm.
Poland. And all he does is play American folk music. And he said, I
Right.
heard your song. He goes, and I
Yeah.
loved it so much. I just wanted to play it on my show. And I was like, that to me was
Yeah.
worth more than having 1,000 streams. It just
Yeah.
took that one because all I knew was like, okay,
Yeah.
as long as you put it out there,
Yeah.
someone's gonna find it.
Yeah. And it does take some energy to like stay in that sort of more noble mindset. I don't want to like pretend it isn't difficult to sometimes start comparing yourself or your success to that of your of others around you, or similar artists. But it's still important to keep reminding yourself why you started to do this in the first place, and what it is you're actually pursuing. Um, and that and unfortunately, of course, our brains are very susceptible to what's my number of streams? Is it good? Is it good enough? But we have to kind of detach ourselves from that mindset actively, proactively, And well, I don't want to preach that, but I mean, I think it would be healthy if we try to uh, keep reflecting on why we're doing this in the first place, and where the joy is actually coming from.
And
Yeah.
I agree with that because there's this level of pressure sometimes
Mm.
among artists, that do similar music to myself, where there's a sense of pride when they say, I put out 3 albums in a year, and then
Mhm.
I'm like, I've been working on one album for 5 years.
Yeah.
But at the
Yeah.
same time, when I look at it, I go, okay, but
Yeah.
in those 3 albums that you put out in a year, did you really say everything you wanted to say, or were
Yeah.
you just trying to put out product? And I think that
Yeah.
that became the thing for my recording, is that I look back on it now and I go, those are the best songs I've written in the
Mhm.
30 years or so that I've been doing this. So it was well
Yeah.
worth taking
Yeah.
5 years to write the best songs, to get the best
Yeah.
recordings I could. So
Yeah.
much so that I'm already anticipating the next one and saying, oh, I'm looking forward to spending maybe 2 years on this next
Yeah.
one, because I really want to get
Yeah.
my words right. I want to get my stories. I want it to actually have some sort of depth to it, because
Mm.
that's the kind of, I'm 52 years old. So I look at it and I go, like, I don't feel like I'm dying anytime soon, but I'm getting, I'm half a
Definitely.
century old now. And so
Yeah.
now I'm kind of looking at it going, what do I want to leave behind as
Hmm.
far as music goes? And I
Yeah.
would hope that maybe my friends' kids, who when they're 30, will listen to my music and go, "Oh, he's telling these stories about New Orleans and
Yeah.
folklore, and like, I'm interested now." And so that
Yeah.
to me is more important than saying I'm going to put out 2 records in a year.
Yeah. It's definitely we definitely feel the push in the industry because of the way it's shaped at the moment, that we constantly kind of want to put out new content to keep our audience engaged. Let's be honest. So if there's an album that takes many years to form, it's not so interesting for other machineries around us that purely want you to keep making new contents. But I rather prefer someone spending half a lifetime to write the next new Beethoven music, than that person has been distracted with trying to keep up, and maybe just only give us some snippets of what potentially would be their talent. So it's for every person to decide for themselves when they feel. This has a lot to do with when is a song ready to release, when they feel it's uh has come enough together to release as an album or as a single. I mean, that process is so individual. And I also believe that the more you do it, it might be able to be a little bit more easier to do similar works after. But yeah, I'm definitely a very atypical artist. Also for my industry partners, I work with people who understand that. I'm sorry, we can't put it in that kind of typical format. Like, you need to release an album every so and so years, or we need to have a new single every 6 months, or I mean, it completely defeats the point of why I started to do this in the first place, if that would be the motivation. And especially as a musician in my 40s, it's not about doing a career for wanting to conquer the world with it. You know, I'm not like in that segment of music. I don't even want to be. So it's a little bit more spiritually carried, what I'm doing, and talking even to you on, so like, from another place in the world, and being able to go in depth. I mean, that's beautiful. It's not something I would have anticipated 15, 20 years ago, that there would be the interest for that as well. So it's all good. So my advice is, take the time you need to make it really, really something you're very proud of, and then show it to the world proudly as well, with your chin up, because you put the work in.
So one of the things I have to say is that when I first heard, I much like most people, I kind of fell into this kind of music. As cliche and corny as it is, I watched the television show Vikings. And
Mhm.
when I watched that show, because again, I'm very interested in history, and especially when it comes to things that I'm not fully aware of, like mythology and folklore, I'm very interested in that. And when I was watching that television show and the music, and that's how I was exposed to Wadruna. And
Yeah.
then, from Wadruna to Highland which led me to you. And I'm
Hmm.
going, this is incredible for me that I was able to immerse myself in this kind of music. But
Yeah.
there was a sense of frustration for me at the beginning because I said, I don't know what the fuck they're saying. Like I wanted to, but then I also found that there's this beauty in not understanding what's being said because it allowed me to kind of paint my own narrative of a
Yeah.
song just based on the music and the energy and the instrumentation. And so even though I don't understand the language behind it, I can tell that from song to song, there's something different just based on that vibe. Is it
Hmm.
important to you though sometimes to think that I would like people to know an English translation so they can hear the story? Or is
Yeah.
it more important for you to project that kind of the energy aspect of it more so than the literal aspect of it?
Yeah. Well, I think
Well,
they both have their purposes, or like they both of these things, the melody or the vibration of the song, the energy of the song without understanding the lyrics, as well as the lyrics, they both carry their own vibration. So if you get both, you have the full picture in a way, or you could maybe more receive it as it's intended, as it's sent out. But I think it's also really nice to hear that people really can enjoy it without needing or wanting to understand the lyrics, and that they can just float on the melodies that the voice is making as well. And I think there already with our breath, with our intention, we are able to capture so much. Also, when we listen to a song of another artist, I personally really love diving into lyrics and writing them. Um, Not everybody is loving words as much as I do. I love old words and old languages.
that's me. That's me. I
It's one
like
of my core nerdy interests, is a sort of special interest. Like I can really like gasp over a beautiful word play or something like that. So I love to dabble with that myself, and it's why I took 2 years to develop lyrics for the Icelandic song with Pali Banine, the poet, and artist from Iceland. Together we like worked on that so much because it's a craft of its own, and so it differs per song. I have to say though that I loved it to also add some English songs on my latest release, Sala,
yes.
in Stone Pillars and Hymning Leva. I think by choosing English, um, we're we're almost even we're much more up close and personal in a way. There's also no hiding from what I'm singing, like for myself. It feels a little bit more bare, but that's beautiful. And it has also its own power to do that. And English is a language a lot of people understand on the world. So yeah, I kind of really enjoyed doing that. It also removed the obstacle of questioning, even though I have my linguistic experts to help me out with some dialects of the north and stuff. It still like removed a little bit the barrier of is this correct? If one tiny little mistake, adding an R or not, and the whole grammar falls apart. So it's I don't know why I do these things to myself. It's difficult. as a non-native, especially dabbling with these old languages. But so with the English, you're a little bit more confident there. But then you have, and you realize you have quite a thick accent, uh, Scandi European, West European accent on your English as well. And that, this might actually have a totally different effect for a native listener, like someone from America or English, how they perceive it when we sing in English. But that is never questioned about any artist. Whoever sings in English is just automatically assumed that's allowed and it's fine, and no matter where you come from. But I'm sure for the natives, I'm sure for the natives, they must hear some differences. Yeah.
It's so fun, like, kind of similar to, if I'm listening to something and
Yeah.
uh, I hear a lyric from a band who says something that's a little historically or geographically inaccurate, and I go,
Mhm.
that's not right. But at the same time, I'm like, but that works really well. So, you go on with your bad self. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Well, so one of the things that was super exciting was that, and of course, I'm going to butcher this name, Lys.
Plus. Yeah.
Lys. Okay, so I was closer the first time. Finally saw a vinyl release last year,
Hmm.
which had to be super exciting for you.
Yes.
So to see it in a
Hmm.
bigger packaging and to hear it, do you
Yeah.
feel like that medium captures the what you were hoping to project when it first came out?
It's interesting because now when I listen to the songs, I still feel they are fresh and well produced. I mean, really also kudos to my good friend Christopher Yule, who I made this together with. What a producer. He's the one who made me want to learn that craft. And I mean, so I'm kind of proud about that. But I do hear that even my voice has changed through the years. Um, so some, yeah, it is a time capsule, a record like that. And but I love it that it had for the first time some press. It had beautiful packaging. It had a vinyl print. These are things that I really really dreamt of when I first released it on a small city. With a beautiful, also was a beautiful city, but to see 10 years on that my label wanted to do this anniversary edition. That was just beautiful to do. And also, yeah, it was good to look back at what we made at the time. I mean, it was really, it's also, we have the Heilung name on here. But at the time, Heilung wasn't known. So
Right.
now it was like, oh, we need to let people know that there's a few songs with these folks because they might have, if they're really like hardcore listeners, they might want to check them out in that case. So yeah, it's nice to look back and see what beautiful collaborations we already did in the past and to bring it sort of again to light uh, today.
Well, being that you and I are both, in the same generation, we're the Gen
Yeah.
X of sorts.
Yes.
We remember what it was like when we were younger to buy a record and go running to our bedrooms and
Yeah.
flop down on the bed and put our headphones on and look at the artwork and read the lyrics and listen to the vinyl. And so it really became something cool for me in my older years because I feel like I get to relive that because you have to dedicate yourself.
Yeah.
You have to commit to listening to a record because if you put a record on and you go to the bathroom and get a drink and you come back, it's like half over. So it's like you really need to sit down and be with it to really
Mm.
get it. And that had to be really cool for you to know, okay, people aren't going to just be able to listen to this as background music or listen to it on shuffle. Like these
Mm.
people are going to buy this record and sit with it and listen to it and take it
Yeah.
in. I
Yeah.
mean, that's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so grateful for those who who like to support it, and also but have that intention of I want to own this record so I can sit with it and enjoy the artwork in a large format and enjoy the songs in a more intimate setting in my private home or yeah, living residence or wherever you are. But there's something, of course, like a lot of vinyl lovers know this already for longer. There's something about having something solid in your hands. And like I have a few records that I got recently, and I'm still sitting on the floor with my headphones going through the booklet, and I can be almost like a child again with that situation. And it's definitely a very different experience from the streaming we also do. I mean, I also stream music. If I listen to music, I'm not saying I'm not like a vinyl purist in that sense, because that's, I cannot, I work with audio professionally and I still can't really exactly hear the difference. Um, except with some compressions and EQ uh, that's being flattened on Spotify automatically. But it's yeah, it's a beautiful experience. So having vinyls as an artist is definitely a bonus. I do think that people long for a more almost vintage kind of appreciation of their artist. With that, I mean, we're almost already looking back with Heimweh, with like nostalgia to the way we used to fan out over some people in the past and collect items and flyers and having that vinyl or cassette tape or CD. And so I think there is a new kind of appreciation for going down that route. And I have it with a few artists. I mean, all of the artists can say, please buy my record, but how much have I bought of the artists that I enjoy and listen to on repeat? So I've been buying some records recently that I know I've listened to a lot, and that was a really good feeling. So yeah.
I totally agree because I feel like, my wife always picks on me because I started buying a lot of records over the past,
Mm.
few years. That a record box will show up on our front doorstep and she'll hold it up. She'll go, "Can you tell me which record is in this box?" And I'll go, "No, it's like one of the five that I ordered last week, And
Yeah,
she goes,
yeah,
"I'll make a deal with you. Listen to all five of the ones first and then buy another." Because sometimes
yeah.
I've got like a stack of 10 records and I go, "Oh, I should listen to these before I buy more."
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, it's also the art of appreciating it then and not only putting it on your shelves. Definitely, I'm guilty of that too, where I sort of wanted to appreciate the moment where I could listen to it and then 2 weeks went by. But still, it's a beautiful thing to see that it's sort of returning or coming back, this kind of this way of consuming music. That's kind of consuming. I don't like that word, but that's kind of like how we take it in. And that's also why I asked listeners if they take the time to listen to my records, especially the last one. And I really say, oh, if you have headphones, please use the headphones because then you can appreciate the way we've made the shaping of the sort of the 3D effect, the that that that's another language that you can use as a producer or as an artist, like how you're gonna let the sounds move. So I have it like a small example is like I have this fluttering of wings in one track. I don't want them to be statically in the middle of the mix somewhere. I want them to move. I want that panning to move. I want
Mhm.
that to feel like something is, going past your ear and like almost takes, the wind with it. So it's that kind of writing with music is storytelling as well. And so I love it when I hear back that people have taken the time to do that kind of stuff, to say, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna put on the headphones, put myself in a dark room or walk through the woods, and now you're getting my full attention. Attention is difficult to receive from your audience in that form, but those who do uh always come back with something that they discovered, and I love that. So
I don't know if you can see it, but like I have I have a beanbag chair over here in the off in the distance
Yes.
thing. And so it's right in front of my turntable and my
Oh,
record
yeah.
collection. So
That's
one
your
of the things
cocoon, music cocoon.
it it totally so like that's my
Yeah.
thing is that my wife
Mm.
goes to bed early. I tend to be a
Yeah.
night owl, so I tend to stay up late till midnight, 1 a.m. And then so when the day's done, I
Mm.
turn all the lights off in my room. I have some LED lights going, and I sit down on that beanbag chair. I take my edible and I
Yeah.
put my music on and I put my headphones on. I
Yeah.
just started doing that again with the headphones.
Yeah.
And I feel like one of the things I did notice is
Mm.
that it's more prevalent in older music where there
Mhm.
was an attention to that detail of, you know, panning, putting a certain guitar player in one
Mm.
ear and another guitar. Like in
Yeah.
some ways, that's gone these days because I feel like everything is done so quickly. But
Mm.
it was very cool for me to put on the headphones and listen to Sala, was
Mm.
that I could hear things that I didn't hear when I was just listening to it with speakers. And it
Yeah.
reminded me that there's so much more to music and
Mm.
to telling the story that it made me go back into my own music and try to add things to it.
Oh,
So
nice.
you inspired me in that
Biggest
sense.
compliment. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
because like I have a particular song that I wrote about, it's kind of like a kind of a
Mm.
folklore about vampires who used to walk the levees in New Orleans. And I
Oh,
had the music and I was like, but what could I do? Something cool. So
yeah.
I found a sample of a wolf howling. So I
Yeah.
took that and I added some reverb to it and then I panned it and I said,
Yeah.
"Oh, that one little move makes
Yeah.
it makes such a difference to you."
Look at
So
you, storytelling here with vampires and wolves in New Orleans. It is, but it is sound design is storytelling. It's the same when you look at your favorite blockbuster movie. There's no coincidence if the sound moves from this direction to that direction. It's all thought out. And in the beginning of our talk, we talked about how art should supposed to be hard, in my opinion. Like you should have some obstacles to find where you want to have your song, that sweet spot in it, where you think now I've expressed it the way I wanted it to be. And that attention to detail is important. And I think that's also what's definitely lacking when we look at the modern horrible, horrible AI music creation apps. Like, okay, it's a difficult topic, so let's stay positive on the interview, but I really don't like that the fact it just skims over every depth and soul. It's definitely so much more superficial, and it will never make that sound design that you described with the wolf from an idea that you just had, like, this is part of the story. I'm picturing this with my mind eye, they're walking there or in this alley, and then that happens. That's AI is never going to do that for you.
no,
So
and
we
and,
really
and
need to protect that imagination quality in our music.
and don't be nice about it. This is my
Yeah.
show. You can get as mean
Yeah.
about it as you want. Be like,
Well,
this
yeah.
sucks.
Well, it sucks.
There you go. That's my girl right there.
Yeah.
Because I feel the same way as
Yeah.
and I do believe that there's a time and a place for AI that can be entertaining
Mm.
to the self.
Yeah.
Like like I'm going to be honest, if I've taken, 100 milligram edible and I'm pretty high and I'm like, I want to play. So I
Mm.
pull up AI and I go, generate a picture of Darth Vader and Boba Fett in a basement listening to Pink Floyd. And it'll
Mm.
come up and I'll go, ah, that's funny. But,
Yeah.
but when I think about people actually using it as a full on art
Mm.
tool, that
Yeah.
bothers me because then I'm like, it, it goes back to making music almost like at home. I had a
Mhm.
friend of mine tell me, these days the good news is that anybody can make an album. And then the
Yeah.
bad news is that anybody can make an album.
Yeah.
And I feel that's kind of the same way with AI, is that now all of a
Yeah.
sudden everybody is an artist,
Yeah.
everybody is a musician. And I'm going, but you didn't put the years in. You
Yeah.
didn't learn how to play a guitar. Your fingers didn't bleed. You didn't write really shitty lyrics at the beginning and then
Yeah.
grow.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of maybe young people, and I think a lot of young people actually understand that it's not something they actually created themselves. It depends on the age. But I think one of the more worrisome things is that we're losing the incentive to want to go through the effort of learning an instrument. And it takes trial and error, and it takes failing many times before you can do what you wanted to do on that instrument and then record it or release a song with it or write a song with it. And so that incentive is very important to sort of protect. Because if from a young age you learn that all you have to do is write a few words and some computer generates it for you, how are you still gonna sit on your bedroom guitar playing practice? You know, that will be then definitely more the exception than the rule. And so it's also about protecting the lineage of learning instruments, the lineage of learning song production. Um, it's one thing to say, yeah, we can replace this with an effective program and it's done and it's more cost effective. But another thing is to really say, how are we going to carry these crafts on to the next future generation? That's something you mentioned earlier in our talk, you know, thinking about how is this going to be perceived by later future generations. I'm more worried, are they still going to play the instruments? Are they gonna want to have enough incentive to do that and find out for themselves how joyful that process can be? Same for other art forms, writing a book, painting, you know, a picture. So all of it is, it's definitely in the times today, sort of under threat of saying what are our core values here. I do hear in my niche of people around me, a lot of people say, no, of course we want to protect the real arts. But it's really up to our individual selves to say, okay, then I'm also not gonna do the shortcut here. I'm not gonna cut corners and I'm gonna put in the effort. So that's how I see it. And it's tempting. It's of course it's tempting to say, oh, if they can just generate something for me, like then I have a start or whatever excuse you make for yourself. So it's yeah. And gosh, we haven't even skimmed on the how is this affecting the climate. So let's leave it there. I think it's important to protect what you want to learn and yeah, that's
So,
thing. That's the thing.
okay, so I only have a couple more things to ask you. And by the way, I could talk to you all freaking day because I
Yeah.
love I don't know, I feel like
Mhm.
we connect on a lot of things.
Mm.
And so I appreciate talking to me for so long. I hope I didn't keep you too long, but um, you know, one of the things I played with myself a lot was I have recording software and I have plugins and things like this.
Mhm.
And I wanted to experiment with things like Nordic drums and obviously
Mm.
things I do not have in my possession. So I found plugins that recreate the sounds of these
Yeah.
drums. But what I noticed is that instead of me just saying, okay, now I have it done, it made me want to understand those instruments more because of all the sounds. Do
Yeah.
you think that that's an okay move for some people to say, like, instead of just using it completely and saying, like,
Yeah.
is that being lazy? Or do you feel like that's like, okay, that's cool because you're getting in touch with the sounds?
No, I think it's a different way of using a tool in modern music production. I mean, I use that myself or my producers who I work together with. We lay down the track demo ideas sometimes with the plugin for a drum. We still have to write the rhythm and put it in place and timing where we like to have it. That's the creative aspect of songwriting that's happening there. And then we're going to contact real drummers who want to play a piece um, just like that for the recording and as well give them, that's a personal choice, but give them some creative room to say, you're not just a drummer for us that on hire, you're allowed to put in your personal flavor, you know. Let's see what happens. And if it's a great take, we might just add it onto the track. It might be genius to bring in that element. And that way, you're also protecting the musicianship of people who have learned to drum, people who have learned to play the guitar very well, the bass, or some kind of ethnic instrument. I see that also in the productions I work with for film and TV is that there is sometimes already software written to give you a guide, and then please play it on your real instrument. So that's something I hope we keep doing. Of course, with plugins now becoming so beautifully efficient, there is, of course, the option to say, I'm not going to hire musicians. Why would I? It sounds great, right? But I think the connoisseur will hear the difference if it's a real drum or not. So it's maybe it's just about having good taste.
And it's so funny because I tried to cut corners on one of my songs one day, I had a saxophone plug in, and I was like, oh, I'm going to put a little saxophone on this,
Yeah.
and it sounded great. But then I played it for a friend of mine, and he texted me back, and he was like, lose the saxophone, man, because for one, I know you can't afford to hire a sax player, and I know you don't play the sax. He goes, and it's missing that human touch. It's missing
Yeah.
the breath between the notes.
Mm.
And then when I went back and listened to it, I was like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds kind of mechanical. And so
Yes.
in some ways it works, but in some ways you have to kind of honor the instrument
Yeah.
and say, I'm not going to be doing a saxophone justice if I'm just
Yeah.
doing win away, you know?
But I think for a music producer, which in this case you are doing when you're creating the song like that, you have, of course, it's really about what type of song are you creating? Are you making a genuine, authentic American folk track, or are you maybe going into a more electronic way of manipulating sounds? Because I do think that that way you can create really creative things with the tools you have in your digital audio workstation, your DAW. So it's gonna be a matter of if you manipulate the sounds, maybe completely change the sound of that sax with crazy distortions or rhythmic chops, or you spend time on it, you zoom it, you make something that wasn't there before. It's not just the electronic signal of a sax, but you have turned it into something completely new. That is creative artistry. And I have absolutely no problem with producers doing that, because I like music also that is just using modern tools to make music. It's not about, in that sense, like old is better or only hand-strum guitars are better. I think what is just important is to say, okay, where's the creative integrity in this? It's different from Suno. You have a prompt, boom, it's ready. That's one thing. I think it's not really real artistry, but if you are yourself really working on a sound, manipulating it, changing it, arranging, you're basically arranging it into something else. I think that is still creative artistry. And there you are the artist. It didn't exist before. So,
So just because I want to make sure I'm on the same level with you. So what I got out of that is that it's one thing to try to fool people and say, oh, this is a real saxophone, much less
yes,
say, I'm going to embrace that this is a very um, computerized or not real saxophone, but so
yes,
maybe include this as part of music that is supposed to be
yes,
synthetic,
definitely. If
and
it
not
has,
real.
yeah, if it has a purpose, if it has an intention, if you're intentionally, that's okay. So I'm a very opinionated person. So, but if you have an intention behind it, then I think it could be great to say, let's go for the sex sound, chop it up, add some really crazy, panning and make different melodies from it than the instrument could ever do if it were a live instrument. Maybe you're gonna put the tuning, the pitch in a completely different range in which it could never have existed before. That is just creative use of a sound. So it's yeah, exactly like you say. It's more about what's your intention behind it. And if you really want to have saxophone, I would love it if you just contact that's me saying this, just
Mhm.
personal opinion.
Right.
Can be wrong, but I would love it if the saxophone players then get the job, or the saxophone students if you can't afford a super pro.
And that's interesting because one of the things that took me so long with my album was that I wanted pianos and organs on my songs, and I don't know how to play piano and organ. So during COVID, I taught myself how to play piano chords and melody lines so that I could do it myself. And there was
Yeah,
something so gratifying about doing that
yeah.
as opposed to saying, I'm going to use a sample and loop it or
Mm,
whatever. Like I literally got to put my hands on the keyboards and make
yeah,
chords and go, wow, I'm creating. So it's more of a sense of gratification knowing that I did this myself. I might not
yeah.
have done it as good as someone I could have hired to do it, but damn it, that was mine.
But still, you did it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I don't think it's also always about how Uh, they also, I don't know if I should be quoted on this, but I don't know if it's always about how well you play an instrument.
Yeah.
It's more about with what intention have you added it to the track. And sometimes a few notes are enough. So,
Oh, I agree with that, and
yeah.
I think you nailed that because I myself would rather hear simplicity and
Mm,
realness than
mm,
to hear somebody who has put 1,000 notes in that I know, okay, you didn't play that. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
Well, so I guess I just have one last thing to ask you, and that was, do we have some new music coming up from Kati Ran? Like, are we going to get a new album in 26 or like what's going on with you?
Well, it's not gonna, unless something unexpected happens, it's not gonna be next year. Unfortunately, no. I've actually been just in the process of collecting new materials. And so that takes a while for me to further develop into the actual recording process. So I'm now back into yeah, being a hunter-gatherer like mode. That's exactly where I am. Like I feel back to square one as if I have to relearn everything again. Like so but then I will once I have some catch something, then I will develop that for sure into some new work. And I'm writing on something, and I'll talk about that another time. But I'm also writing some of my past experiences on music production and instrument building. And
Mm,
yeah, that sort of process, the process of growing your roots to make this kind of things.
I love that. And you know what? You are one of the most incredibly interesting people I talk to, and I always enjoy hearing about your process. And I'll be honest, it inspires me. And I hope that other people who hear you talk about your process will feel inspired. So,
Mm.
always thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for the nice chat again for the second time. It's always good to come back and see where the conversation leads us. So yeah.
You're the best.
All right. You take care now. Have a good day.
Oh my
And
God.
you see another face of me. Mouth speaks still as stone. You see another instead of me. We're breathing through these stones, and if I'm just forsaken, no, 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 no. Like stone pillars standing, 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 still untold. You spun another faith for me. The hearts will turn to stone. Voices mingle, the song is spun. Our grinding now has begun. The voices mingle, one song becomes. Wielding my double-barked tongue. Voices mingle, the song is sung. All that was given, all comes undone. The voices mingle, time to turn. Hear my truth song, it's rebirth.